Viewer discretion is advised.
While the Steelers followed up their 15-win season with the Super Bowl as wild cards, Green Bay's 15-1 campaign came the season after they won the Super Bowl as a 6th seed. The 2011 Packers had a lot of things going for them, but the most crucial one was a Hall of Fame quarterback playing at his peak. That season, Aaron Rodgers won his first MVP with 45 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions in 15 starts. Green Bay blew through the first 13 weeks of the schedule, putting up a league-best 35 points per game. Their defense was 19th in points allowed, but that was largely a result of teams having to keep up with their high-flying offense. If they had one weakness, it was balance. No one on the Packers had more than 600 yards rushing, and the team threw on 59% of their plays from scrimmage. It was a formula to put up gaudy numbers in the regular season, but not to win in the playoffs. The Kansas City Chiefs proved that in Week 15 when the 13-0 Packers traveled to Arrowhead. The Chiefs sold out to stop Rodgers and ended up holding him to his lowest output on that season, just 17 of 35 and 1 touchdown through the air. The Packers couldn't adapt and handed the ball off just 15 times, hardly slowing down a Chiefs pass rush that sacked Rodgers 4 times and holding on for a 19-14 win to shock the undefeated Pack. The loss didn't affect seeding, but it did give other teams a blueprint. When the wildcard Giants came to Lambeau in the divisional round, the Packers were rested, but not ready for a game plan that mirrored what the Chiefs did a month earlier. Eli Manning passed with remarkable efficiency, while the Giants sold out to defend the pass, swarming Packer receivers and playing tight coverage. When the pass game proved ineffective, as Rodgers averaged just 5.5 yards per attempt, the Packers didn't have the run game to keep a red-hot Eli Manning on the bench. Ultimately, the Packers handed off just 16 times and dropped back 57 times and had a ton of missed catches. Not a recipe for success. Also, it doesn't help to give up a Hail Mary right before half. New York stunned the 15-1 Packers by a score of 37-20, but maybe the score wouldn't have been so lopsided if the play calling wasn't either. We'll give the Packers' first logo a pass. They had no idea they would become an anchor franchise in a $27 billion industry. They just wanted to pack some shit up and send it places. But this one, what is going on? It looks like a kid grabbed a hold of oil pastels and got to work. Sorry kid, you get an F. The NFL's oldest stadium breaks the top 10, and purists watching this will argue it needs to be higher. Hear me out. The seating bowl has a low stadium slope, which places the fans farther from the action, and guess what? They are sitting on bleachers, so bring your own ass warmer. On the plus side, the place is full of tradition, and it has been recently remodeled. It's a cathedral of football. But from an objective standpoint, putting it any higher on this list would be cheesy. There have been more great head coaches in Packers history than bad ones, but the worst one is still a Hall of Famer. Okay, maybe that's misleading because I'm talking about Bart Starr, who actually coached the team he used to quarterback. Starr lasted from 1975 to 1983, which was impressive given his winning percentage was just .406. A great quarterback, yes, but Vince Lombardi, he was not. At first I had Lambeau as a maybe, as in the future, the NFL might go crazy and award a stadium with the game on some kind of nostalgia or anniversary kick. But quite simply, Green Bay doesn't have the infrastructure, the airport, or the hotels. The atrium helps for Radio Row, but that's the only indoor space to hide from the brutal February Wisconsin weather. Nobody wants to work in sub-zero temperatures when LA and Miami exist. Sorry, Lambeau, not happening. Here's one that's pretty hard to believe. The Lions came into Lambeau in September of 1970 and put a 40 burger on the Pack, shutting out Bart Starr and the Packers offense. This record wasn't even close to threatened until the 2006 Pats came to Lambeau and beat Brett Favre 35-0. Lions fans, savor this stat. Tell all your friends if you have to, if you have any friends. Oh wait, did Aaron Rodgers' chakras not align in order for them to actually go for it on 4th down? That play call was more neutered than a rescue puppy. It was so egregious, even Jeopardy contestants roasted it.
Who wanted to kick that field goal?
Who's Aaron gonna throw to now that Devontae Adams is gone? Jake from State Farm? Man, if Rodgers ends his career with only one ring, why, that would be more awkward than his appearances on podcasts.
People say, "Oh, immunization, vaccination."
Yeah, I did. I said that a lot.
Yeah, you did.
Yep.
But
How many people do you think you killed?
90s Packers. The Packers made the playoffs 6 straight years from 1993 to 1998, but their real title window was from 1995 to 1997, during which time they led the NFL in win-loss percentage, employed a QB in Brett Favre, who won MVP each year, made the NFC Championship game each year, 2 Super Bowl appearances, and a Super Bowl championship in 1996. They had a 3-point fourth-quarter lead in the 1995 NFC Championship game and the ball with the score tied at 24 in the fourth quarter of Super Bowl 32, but couldn't close the deal either time. They should have won 2 rings at least. 2010's Packers. The Cheeseheads started off the decade with a Super Bowl win over Pittsburgh, and with superstar and future Hall of Fame quarterback Aaron Rodgers entering his prime, it looked as though the team was destined for multiple rings. Safe to say, though, that obviously hasn't happened. Not that the team wasn't successful. After all, they made the playoffs 8 times, including each of the first 7 years of the decade. They made 4 NFC Championship games, but lost the last 3, including a heartbreaker in Seattle in 2014. Thanks to poor defenses and bad coaching, the prime years of the most talented quarterback in NFL history were largely wasted. Green Bay. No team has done less with more in recent history than the Packers, who have just 2 rings and 3 Super Bowl appearances since 1992, despite having had 2 quarterbacks who combined to win 6 MVPs. 2 rings is nothing to sneeze at, you might say, but the Ravens have just as many rings with Trent Dilfer and Joe Flacco. That's unacceptable. It's even more unacceptable that through sheer dumb luck, the best quarterback of all time fell into your laps in the 2005 NFL Draft, and you have just 1 Super Bowl appearance to show for it in his 11 full seasons as starter. You refuse to be aggressive in free agency during Rodgers' prime or be proactive in coaching changes with Don Capers and Mike McCarthy. Instead of getting Rodgers' help in the draft while on the cusp of the Super Bowl in 2020, you drafted his replacement. In Rodgers' 9 playoff losses, you've given up over 35 points per game, 5 times giving up over 37 points. 3 other times, Rodgers led a game-tying drive in the fourth quarter just to never touch the ball again thanks to your defense giving up the game-losing score. And also a devastating home NFC Championship game loss in 2020 where your team gave up 31 points and the offensive line collapsed in the fourth quarter. Remember when Brandon Bostic cost you a trip to the Super Bowl by trying to be a hero on an onside kick? If not for Rodgers, you would have been bottom feeders over the last decade. Wisconsin is a shitty state and most forms of cheese smell like the inside of an asshole. 3 teams, the Packers, Giants, and Jets, don't have a mascot because they're all a bunch of no-fun poopy heads. The Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers. One of the toughest choices of any franchise, as Green Bay has been blessed with 3 legendary quarterbacks in Bart Starr, Brett Favre, and Rodgers. Starr won the most, but he just doesn't have anywhere near the quantity of Favre or Rodgers. Favre certainly had the quantity and won a Super Bowl, but also a lot of meh seasons and playoff disappointments. Rodgers himself has both the quantity and quality, as well as a Super Bowl win, although his playoff career outside of 2010 can only be described as a disappointment. Still, Rodgers gets the nod here for his legendary efficiency and 4 MVPs. It's just a shame he hasn't been more consistent in the playoffs. Green Bay Packers, Jerry Taggy. You might not believe it, since Green Bay has been saddled with back-to-back Hall of Fame quarterbacks for the last 30 years, but there was once a span between Bart Starr and Brett Favre where they mostly churned out dog shit at the quarterback position. Taggy was drafted 11th overall in 1972 to be the next Bart Starr, when it turns out he ended up being more like Fart Starr. Get it? Because he stunk like a fart? I'm doing my best here, guys, all right? Taggy finished his 3-year career with 3 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. Green Bay Packers 2014 NFC Championship game. I speak for Packers fans everywhere that even amongst the many postseason heartbreaks, the 2014 NFC Championship game still stands out well above the rest. Green Bay's defense forced 5 turnovers, many deep in Seattle territory, but Green Bay's high-powered offense led by MVP Aaron Rodgers couldn't capitalize with touchdowns. Green Bay had a 12-point lead with 4 minutes left before Seattle reeled off 15 unanswered points, thanks in large part to a botched onside kick by Brandon Bostic. Green Bay would tie it to send it into overtime before losing the coin toss and watching Russell Wilson throw the game-winning touchdown. Green Bay Packers, Preston Smith. Smith is not a bad player by any means, but since coming to Green Bay in 2019, he's been viewed as a cornerstone of the Packers defense when he's been more inconsistent than you'd like. He's capable of taking over games occasionally, but too many times you forget he's even out there on the field. Green Bay Packers, Brett Favre. Famously irresponsible user of welfare funds, Brett Favre had an amazing peak, but he had way more mediocre seasons than people remember, and during the playoffs in the second half of his career, he was really, really bad. Nobody overrates Bart Starr, even though he won 5 rings and has amazing playoff stats, and despite not winning as many rings as you'd think, Aaron Rodgers is still better in the playoffs than Favre was. No other quarterback the Packers have had is highly thought of anyway, so Favre gets the nod. Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers has won back-to-back MVPs and 4 MVPs overall, is a future first-ballot Hall of Famer, and arguably a top 5 quarterback of all time. His playoff career leaves something to be desired, but there is no questioning his talent and his ability to carry teams during the regular season. He will certainly be tested again this year after the departure of Davante Adams. Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers. Truth be told, I've grown tired of Rodgers' act. He's a hippie with a golden arm. Is his consistent regular season excellence enough to outweigh the yearly postseason disappointment he endures? I could honestly lean either way. But he's also why the Packers have remained relevant for the last decade, so I just can't say he's overrated. Verdict, properly raters. Green Bay Packers. For years, we've heard how the Packers haven't provided Aaron Rodgers enough help to get back to the Super Bowl, and I admit, I was on the front lines pushing the Rodgers GOAT agenda for a while, but last year's disgraceful playoff loss to the 49ers broke me for good. For all of his arm talent and smarts, Rodgers is not as good in big moments in the postseason as he should be. Sure, he's had some clutch moments, mostly against the Cowboys, big whoop, and a fluke Hail Mary versus the Cardinals, all luck, but even in 2010, he was lucky to win playing like shit in the NFC Championship game. Ever since his one truly great big game performance, Super Bowl 45, he has constantly missed crucial throws, taken ill-timed sacks, disappeared for entire halves, or missed open reads in the playoffs. How can a guy who is so consistently dominant and efficient in the regular season become so out of control in the playoffs when he has to meet the moment? This is why Tom Brady is better than Rodgers. Brady meets the moment over and over again in ways Rodgers doesn't. It's a harsh reality, but it's reality. Has Brady had better defenses? Yes. Has Brady been more lucky? Yes. But Rodgers has still had multiple golden opportunities to win more Super Bowls, and he just hasn't gotten it done. And that's where the disparity in rings between the two begins to make sense. So I'm sure Green Bay will win a ton of regular season games again. Rodgers could three-peat for MVP, and it will still end in heartbreak in the playoffs when Rodgers fails to come through in the fourth quarter for the 3rd straight year. That many NFL fans have asked over the years: have the Green Bay Packers wasted the career of their Hall of Fame quarterback, Aaron Rodgers? After all, despite having Rodgers under center for the better part of 12 seasons, the Green Bay Packers have appeared in just 1 Super Bowl. Was it the incompetence of Mike McCarthy? Was it Ted Thompson sitting on his hands and not doing anything in free agency? Was it Don Capers' defense collapsing? Or was it Aaron Rodgers himself not showing up in the postseason? There's plenty of blame to go around, and this video hopes to look deeper into that. So you better watch this video or else I will find you, and I am not joking. After sitting behind Trump supporter / dick pic sender Brett Favre for 3 years, Aaron Rodgers finally got his chance to start full-time in 2008. Faced with the pressure of living up to the legend's shadow, Aaron Rodgers held up pretty well individually, throwing for over 4,000 yards and having a passer rating of over 93. But even though Rodgers showed that he wasn't a scrub, the Packers took a big step back as a team. After being on the brink of going to the Super Bowl just a year earlier before dick pic sender Favre threw an interception in overtime of the NFC Championship game, the Packers fell to 6-10 in Rodgers' first year as a starter and missed the playoffs entirely. The Packers' 2008 record could be seen as deceiving though, because they had a positive point differential and had a lot of bad luck late in close games. Many people expected the Packers to regress to the mean in a positive way and win more games the following year, and they were right. In Rodgers' second season, the Packers went 11-5 and made the playoffs. Rodgers also showed that his first-year success wasn't a fluke, throwing for over 4,400 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. He was quietly emerging as one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but people were still curious to see how he would respond once he got to the playoffs. Unfortunately for Aaron, the way his defense performed in his playoff debut would become a pattern throughout the rest of his career. Despite starting off slow, including throwing an interception on his first ever postseason pass, Aaron Rodgers ended up balling out throughout the entire game, throwing for over 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, and rushing for another. But sadly, that's not what people remember most about this game. What they remember most is the way it ended, which was Rodgers getting strip-sacked on a missed face mask called on a fumble that was returned for a touchdown by Arizona's Carlos Dansby. Despite having one of the greatest playoff debuts of any quarterback in NFL history, Rodgers came out as a loser. It's obvious that for this game, most of the blame lies in the defense. I mean, after all, Arizona quarterback Kurt Warner threw more touchdowns than incompletions. What made this defensive collapse particularly disappointing was how stout the Packers defense had been all regular season long. They even had the Defensive Player of the Year in Charles Woodson, although Darrelle Revis probably should have won it, but that's neither here nor there. The facts are, in the regular season, the Packers defense was 2nd in yards allowed per drive and 7th in points allowed per drive. Arizona was a talented offense, no doubt, but did anybody really expect this Packers defense to give up 45 points on 10 possessions? I don't think so. And Rodgers isn't completely blameless. After all, in overtime, he overthrew a wide-open Greg Jennings on the play before the game-ending fumble that would have ended the game most likely for the Packers. But still, to say he deserves blame for the team losing after putting up 5 total touchdowns and 45 points offensively is just fucking stupid. One thing the loss to the Cardinals did show, however, was that Aaron Rodgers could perform great in the postseason, which is the mark of any all-time great quarterback, except for Tom Brady. And when you talk about all-time great postseasons by a quarterback, Rodgers' 2010 postseason is certainly up there. The 2010 Packers went on a miracle run to their first and only Super Bowl appearance in the Rodgers era. Capped off with one of the greatest performances in Super Bowl history by a quarterback, Aaron Rodgers won Super Bowl 45 MVP. Going into Super Bowl 45, the talk was whether the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were looking for their 3rd ring in 6 years, would become the next dynasty. But after being taken down by Green Bay, the dynasty talk shifted to the Packers. And it wasn't difficult to see why. The Packers had what every franchise hopes to have: a young, proven superstar quarterback to lead their team for the next decade. But Rodgers wasn't the only talented member of the Packers either. After all, having Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson, Jermichael Finley, adding Randall Cobb through the draft on offense, along with their defensive studs like Clay Matthews, B.J. Raji, Charles Woodson, and Nick Collins, there was no doubt in many people's minds the Packers would get back to at least 2 or 3 more Super Bowls with Rodgers. But, as everybody knows, that hasn't been the case. The Packers' 9-year title drought hasn't been without its positive moments. After all, the 2011 season saw the Packers go 15-1. Rodgers went from being a superstar quarterback to a god-level quarterback, putting up arguably the greatest statistical season by any quarterback in NFL history. And although there were warning signs throughout the season that the Packers defense might be dog shit, the Packers offense was so explosive that it didn't even matter. So heading into the divisional round against the New York Giants, people expected the Giants to put up a gritty, tough fight, but eventually the Packers would overwhelm them with their talent. But that's not what happened. Going against what everybody expected, the Giants waltzed into Lambeau and basically kicked the Packers' ass. For really the first time all season, Aaron Rodgers looked mortal, missing several throws, but Rodgers also wasn't helped out by his receiving core. After all, the Packers finished with 6 drops, which was tied for the most by any team in any game during the 2011 NFL season. And just like in 2009, the Packers defense once again decided not to show up. Unlike 2009, however, the 2011 Packers defense playing like shit in the playoffs wasn't surprising to anybody. During the regular season, this was a team that finished 31st in yards allowed per drive and 23rd in points allowed per drive. That's why, if I had to blame anybody the most for this game, it would once again be Dom Capers' defense. Giving up 37 points at home is never acceptable, especially when 7 of those points come on a Hail Mary at the end of the first half, which was a mental backbreaker for the Packers. I don't speak for all Packers fans, but I think I feel pretty confident in saying this goes down as the 2nd most heartbreaking playoff loss in the Rodgers era. And even after this extremely disappointing loss, there was still a lot of hope for the future in Packerland. After all, fluky shit like this happens all the time in the NFL postseason, being its single elimination. Rodgers was still entering his prime, all of the core players were still there, the future was still bright in Green Bay. The 2012 Packers went 11-5, won the NFC North, and secured a wild card playoff spot. And though most teams would take that in a heartbeat, the 2012 Packers were a few plays away from being 13-3, and in all likelihood they probably should have been 12-4 at the least. The Hail Mary debacle in Week 3 at Seattle with the replacement refs cost them a win, and the defense cost them another win in the final week of the season when they made Christian Ponder look like a reincarnation of Joe Montana, giving up 37 points and wasting an incredible performance by Aaron Rodgers. So instead of being 13-3 with a first round bye, the Packers were 11-5 in a wild card, and after dismantling the Joe Webb Vikings in the wild card round at home, they had to go to Candlestick to face the 49ers and a famous kneeler. And just like in Rodgers' Rodgers' first 2 career playoff losses, the Packers defense completely shit its pants once again. After starting off on a high note with a 52-yard interception return by Sam Shields, the Packers finished giving up 45 points on 11 possessions. The 49ers racked up 323 rushing yards, 181 of those by Colin Kaepernick, the most by a quarterback in NFL postseason history. In total, the Packers defense gave up 579 yards. It's obvious they deserve most of the blame for this loss. Rodgers wasn't great, but he wasn't bad either. He would have had to have played the greatest game by any quarterback in NFL history for the Packers to have even had a chance to win on this night. So it's difficult to blame him or any other of the offensive players for the loss. The 2013 season was a bit of a lost season for the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, as Rodgers missed essentially half the season with a broken collarbone. Despite this, the Packers won the NFC North on a brilliant last-second play in the final week of the season against the Chicago Bears on the road. Thanks to winning the division, the Packers secured a home playoff game in the wild card round. And even better, they would be playing the hated 49ers once again, earning a chance at revenge from the previous year. And although this wouldn't be a blowout like the year before, once again, the Packers came up short. Unlike Rodgers' first 3 playoff losses, the defense didn't completely collapse. They gave up just 23 points. But that doesn't mean that Rodgers still didn't get screwed by his defense in the end. After leading a game-tying field goal drive to tie the score at 20 with 5 minutes left in the game, Rodgers never saw the ball again, as his defense promptly gave up a 14-play, 65-yard field goal drive which ended the Packers' season for good. A brutal dropped interception early in the drive by Packers cornerback Micah Hyde basically sums up Rodgers' playoff luck outside of 2010. But Rodgers isn't completely blameless in this loss either. He didn't perform bad enough to lose the game by himself, but he didn't play well enough to win it by himself either. But still, he did show up late in the third and in the fourth quarter, which is when quarterbacks are judged the most for their clutch time play. Sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce your way, and in this case, that's what happened to the Packers. Unfortunately for the Packers, though, this would be the first of 3 straight seasons which would end this way, with Rodgers leading a game-tying drive and never seeing the ball again. The 2014 season is a bittersweet one for Packers fans. The sweet portion is that the Packers went 12-4, earned a first-round bye, and Aaron Rodgers went back to being the best quarterback in the world, earning his 2nd MVP award. And after a controversial ending to their divisional round win against the Cowboys, the Packers went to Seattle to face the defending champion Seahawks. And that's where the bitter part of the bittersweet label comes in what is unquestionably the most heartbreaking playoff loss for the Packers in the Aaron Rodgers era, and maybe in Packers history overall. Any football fan already knows how this game went. The Seahawks played as badly as humanly possible for the first 56 minutes of this game. Russell Wilson threw 4 interceptions, there were fumbles, but the Packers didn't capitalize quite as much as they needed to early on, with several different drives stalling deep in Seahawks territory where they settled for field goals. Despite these extremely questionable coaching decisions by Mike McCarthy, the Packers still looked like they had the game in hand, up 19-7 with under 5 minutes left. After being conservative with 3 straight Eddie Lacy runs, the Packers punted the ball back to the Seahawks with just under 4 minutes remaining. Russell Wilson finally woke up and led the Seahawks on a great touchdown drive, which ended with him running for a 1-yard touchdown score. Still, with just 2 minutes remaining and the Packers up 19-14, all it would take was one more onside kick recovery for the Packers to secure their spot in Super Bowl 49 against the Patriots. And then Brandon Bostic happened. Bostic was a hardly used backup tight end who was on the hands team for the onside kick as a blocker, but he was feeling himself and decided to go up to try and catch the kick, and he botched it, which resulted in the Seahawks getting the ball back. All it took was 3 plays for the Seahawks to score again on a 24-yard touchdown run by Marshawn Lynch. The Seahawks then converted an extremely fluky 2-point conversion, which, as wild as it was in real time, it became even more important after the fact, as it gave the Seahawks a 3-point lead. Touching the ball for the first time since being up 19-7 just a few minutes earlier, Aaron Rodgers led the Packers on a game-tying field goal drive once again. This gets forgotten about because of how the game ended, but still, it was an extremely clutch drive that set up an extremely clutch kick by Mason Crosby to tie the game and send it into overtime. The 2-point conversion I just talked about a few minutes ago, yeah, if the Seahawks hadn't converted that fluky-ass 2-point conversion, this drive would have won the Packers the game instead of sending it into overtime where they never touched the ball again offensively, as on the very first possession, their defense gave up a game-losing 35-yard touchdown pass to Jermaine Kearse. Out of all the playoff
playoff losses in the Rodgers era, this is probably the playoff loss that Rodgers is most responsible for. It should be noted that he was playing in an extremely hostile environment on a bad leg and still came through in the clutch once again to lead a game-tying drive. But he still threw 2 bad interceptions and was off on a couple other throws that would have given the Packers an insurmountable lead. But it would be incorrect to say that Rodgers was the most to blame. After all, as I alluded to earlier in the video, Mike McCarthy's extremely questionable coaching decisions came into play as well. 2 different times the Packers had the ball 4th and 1 on the Seahawks 1-yard line, and McCarthy decided to settle for field goals. When you have the league MVP, albeit on a bad leg, still, you have 1 yard to gain. Stop coaching like a pussy and just go for it. Even if you didn't get it, you're putting the Seahawks on their own 1-yard line and having them go drive 99 yards for a score. Just horrible coaching. Then there's obviously the Brandon Bostic factor and the fact that if he didn't try to play a hero, Jordy Nelson most likely would have caught the onside kick and the Packers would have won the game. It's tough to blame the defense for this loss because after all, they played extremely well for the first 3.5 quarters, but still, it's tough to ignore that for the last 3 possessions, they completely disappeared. Considering this was a very well-balanced Packers team, this will easily go down as the biggest missed opportunity in Rodgers' career. The 2015 season was a challenging season for the Packers. They started off 6-0, Aaron Rodgers was once again in the MVP conversation, and then things just kind of fell off the rails. The Packers went just 4-6 over their last 10 regular season games to finish the season 10-6. 6 of those losses were 3 home games to their divisional opponents, the Lions, the Bears, and the Vikings. And if it weren't for a fluky Hail Mary touchdown pass to beat the Lions on the road, maybe the Packers wouldn't have even made the playoffs. But still, they made the playoffs as a wildcard team, and they dispatched the Washington redacted in the wildcard round on the road to set up a divisional playoff game against the Cardinals in Arizona. Cardinals were 13-3 and once again had a high-powered offense led by MVP candidate Carson Palmer. The game ended up being a slugfest, fighting back and forth. Considering the subpar supporting cast Rodgers was playing with, Jordy Nelson was out for the year with a torn ACL, Devontae Adams wasn't playing, Randall Cobb went out early in the game with an injury. This could actually be seen as one of Rodgers' more heroic playoff efforts. And everybody remembers how the game ended, with Rodgers throwing a Hail Mary bomb to Jeff Janis to tie the game. But if you haven't figured out already, because I already gave it away a few minutes ago, the Packers once again never saw the ball in overtime, giving up an 80-yard touchdown drive on the opening possession. For the 3rd straight year, Rodgers' late-game heroics were all for naught. Rodgers gave a respectable effort despite the lack of talent around him. The defense wasn't horrible until crunch time once again, and Mike McCarthy wasn't horrible either. Sometimes you get into the postseason and you lose to a better team, and in this case, that's pretty much what happened. But still, it was tough to feel like we hadn't been teased with that incredible ending and then not getting to see Rodgers touch the ball again. The Packers were now 5 years removed from their lone Super Bowl win with Rodgers, and Rodgers was in age, turning 32. The stellar receiving core that he broke into the league with was all but gone besides Jordy Nelson, and the relationship between Rodgers and coach Mike McCarthy was growing stale. Considering all these factors, it's honestly amazing that in 2016, the Packers even made it as far as the postseason. The 2016 season saw the Packers start 4-6 in their first 10 games, and basically missing the playoffs seemed like it was inevitable. But then over the last 6 games of the year, Aaron Rodgers went on arguably the greatest stretch of quarterback play the league has ever seen, leading the Packers on a 6-game win streak and clinching the division with the win in Week 17 at Detroit. Rodgers' stellar play continued into the postseason when the Packers dismantled the Giants at home in the wild-card round, followed by a classic win on the road to upset the Cowboys in the divisional round. Shout out to the Jared Cook throw and the Mason Crosby clutch field goal. With what once looked like a lost season, the Packers were suddenly 1 game away from the Super Bowl once again, this time going on the road to play the Atlanta Falcons. Coming off of a huge upset win over the 1-seed Cowboys, there was a lot of belief that the Packers might actually pull a 2010 and go all the way. But it didn't happen. Simply put, 2016 NFL MVP Matt Ryan and the entire Falcons offense tore the Packers defense a new asshole, dropping 44 points on 9 offensive possessions. Rodgers, for the most part, played pretty well. He led the Packers in field goal go range on their opening drive, which ended with Crosby missing a makeable field goal. Then on the next possession, Rodgers led them deep into Falcons territory, where fullback Aaron Ripkowski then fumbled, turning the ball over. In the blink of an eye, the Packers were down 17-0, and Rodgers hadn't even done anything wrong. Followed by some drops and an arm punt, aka an interception on 3rd and long late in the half to make his stats look worse, Rodgers really deserves no blame at all for this loss. The blame, once again, falls on his defense completely crapping their pants. Seriously, how the fuck did Dom Capers keep his job so long? Did they not realize that 2010 was a complete fluke defensively? As with the previous year, the Packers just lost to a superior team, but that doesn't mean that the loss still couldn't be seen as heartbreaking. To get on the doorstep of going back to the Super Bowl once again just to fall short in spectacular fashion takes a toll on somebody, and there's no doubt it would take a toll on Rodgers and forward. 2017 was a lost year for the Packers as Aaron Rodgers broke his collarbone for the second time in Week 6. With Rodgers missing effectively 10 games, the Packers finished 7-9, missing the playoffs entirely. Rodgers came back against Carolina late in the season with the Packers sporting a 7-6 record, but it was obvious that he wasn't at full strength, throwing a career-high 3 interceptions, although he still was leading the team on a game-tying drive when a fumble by Geronimo Allison all but ended their chances. The 2018 season was depressing, to say the least. Early in the season opener against Chicago, Rodgers hurt his leg once again, and it looked like he was going to miss the entire season. Instead, he came back into the game for the second half and produced one of the greatest comebacks in football history. But that would be the high point for the Packers in the 2018 season. Rodgers was never 100%, and the feud between him and Coach Mike McCarthy had gotten to the point where it was unmistakable. The Packers finally fired McCarthy late in the season, and the Packers missed the playoffs for the second straight year with a 6-9-1 record. Despite the recent doldrums, there was some optimism that hadn't existed in a long time in Packerland heading into 2019. With new head coach and Ryan Reynolds impersonator Matt LaFleur at the helm, people were expecting a rejuvenated season from Rodgers. And although Rodgers' individual statistics didn't improve from the year before, the Packers' team record did. The Packers went 13-3 and got the second seed in the NFC. Following a vintage Rodgers performance in the divisional round against Seattle, the Packers were once again back in the NFC Championship game, this time against an old foe, San Francisco. But like Rodgers' first 3 career NFC Championship game appearances, this one would be on the road in hostile territory. And much like the championship game against Atlanta a few years prior, the Packers were overwhelmed right from the start. The 49ers got constant pressure on Rodgers in the first half, while the defense couldn't stop a fucking nosebleed. By the time it was over, the Packers' defense had given up 285 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. All in all, the Packers' defense gave up 37 points on 9 possessions. Disgustingly bad. There's no doubt that the defense is the biggest reason why the Packers lost this game, but that's not to say Rodgers isn't blameless either. He had a horrible first half, which definitely helped put the Packers in a hole early. A bad interception and a botched snap contributed to that. But there have been plenty of examples of quarterbacks who started off games slowly in the playoffs before winning the game in the end because their defense kept them in it. But in the case of Aaron Rodgers' 2 most recent NFC Championship game losses, his defense played so poorly the entire game, it's almost like it didn't even matter how he played. Sure, the game might have been closer had the Packers scored a touchdown or 2 in the first half, but their defense never showed any signs of being able to stop the 49ers. I mean, Jesus, Jimmy Garoppolo only threw 8 passes the entire game. The 49ers literally told the Packers what they were going to do, and the Packers still couldn't stop it. Dom Capers wasn't around anymore, but still the defense continued to crap its pants at the worst possible time for number 12. Now that we've covered each of Rodgers' 8 playoff losses in detail, it's time to look at them as a whole. My conclusion is that the biggest catalyst for the Packers not going back to the Super Bowl in the Rodgers era is easily the Packers' defense. In Rodgers' 8 playoff losses, the Packers have given up 36.4 points per game. I don't care who you are as a quarterback or how good you are as a quarterback, when your defense is consistently giving up that many points, you're not going to win many games. And it's not as if there's just 1 or 2 outlier games influencing that average either. In 5 of Rodgers' 8 playoff losses, his defense gave up 37 points, and in 3 of his 8 losses, his defense gave up 44 or more points. In Tom Brady's entire NFL career, his teams have never given up more than 42 points in any game, and it's happened 3 different times to Rodgers in the postseason. You're probably saying, well, for 5 of his 8 playoff losses, the defense completely sucked. But what about the other 3 losses that are still remaining? Well, like I said earlier in the video, in all of those 3 losses, as Rodgers led a game-tying drive in the fourth quarter just to never touch the ball again. What does this mean? Well, it means that basically Rodgers isn't to blame for any of his playoff losses. How am I supposed to blame a guy for losing when his defense gives up almost 40 points a game, or when he leads a game-tying drive and never even gets a chance to get the ball again? Keep in mind that in all 8 of Rodgers' playoff losses, the Packers offense has scored at least 20 points. And while you could say that in some of those losses, those points came in garbage time, it's not as if the Packers offense has ever been shut down for an entire game in one of Rodgers' playoff losses. In the end, shitty defense and some shitty luck is the biggest reason why Aaron Rodgers, the most talented quarterback to ever play, only has 1 Super Bowl ring. Nobody's saying he's been perfect in the postseason, but he's been pretty much as good as any quarterback that's ever lived. And things that are out of his control consistently seem to go against him to prevent him from winning more. Remember, football is a team sport after all. The team I root for is the Eagles.
Shit, we traded up! We traded up! Oh, we traded up with the Dolphins! Oh shit, we're gonna pick a first rounder! Oh, give me Patrick Queen! Oh, come on! Give me Queen or give me Mims. Give me Queen or Mims. Queen or Mims! We're picking now! What do we trade? Oh, God. Oh, Goody, you son of a gun. What did we do? What did we do? Goody, what did you do? You mastermind. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Is it going to be Mims? Is it going to be Queen? Oh, we gave up. Okay, we gave up our first and we gave up our fourth. Okay. That's not terrible. The pick is in. The pick is in. We moved up 4 spots and we gave up a fourth. Oh, who are we gonna get? Mims? Queen? Please, God, not Jordan Love. This Matt, I love you. And there's Goody. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Oh, God, I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous. Yeah, we traded to the Packers. We got it, Goodell. Shut the hell up and let's go. Come on. Yes. Are you shitting me? Are you shitting me? I don't. Are you? Just hold on 1 second. Just 1 second. So Jordan Love shows a lot of potential. To the list. Listen. I need you to just Barmore or JOK. Barmore or JOK. That's what I need. That's what I need. Let's go. Barmore or JOK is right there. They're right there. They're right there. Please. Please. Come on. Come on.
With the 29th pick
Just not Jordan Love again.
in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Eric Stokes, defensive back.
Eric Stokes. I mean, he's fast. I talked about him. He's fast. Eric Stokes, he's a corner from Georgia. He's really, really fast. He was in the video that I did. Barmore and JOK were right there! Just draft a freaking linebacker! Oh my god. I mean, he's really fast. That's what... He's really fast. That's something. I just thought, come on! Olave. Here we go. Saints are in. They get Olave. All right, so Twitter spoiled it. So, oh god, they get Olave. The Lions have traded though. What? So now the number 12 is the Lions. We got a trade alert again. The Lions. Oh my god, if the Lions get Jameson Williams, if they get Jameson Williams, I'm gonna lose my mind. I will lose my mind. If they get Jameson Williams, I am going to throw something. The Lions are on the clock. You already got Hutchinson. Chris Olave. All right, so they get him. They get Chris Olave. And now the Lions. The frickin' Lions. All right, Detroit sent the number 32, 34, and 66 to the Vikings. Wait a minute. So now the Vikings aren't picking until 32? Oh, look, it's 5.
Dude.
What?
Just got screwed
Dude,
by the Lions.
The Lions. Hold on. The pick is officially in.
Gotta be Jameson Williams, right?
Oh, God, please no. Please no.
And the rumor is that they're not taking Willis here. Like, it's...
It would make no sense for that. I mean, unless they're trying to cut in front of Pittsburgh. Like, that's the only reason I could think. By the way, congrats on a phenomenal draft. Look at you guys being competent.
They're saying it's Williams. They're saying it's Williams.
Oh, my God, no. You son of a bitch. They're taking Jameson Williams.
This is going to be terrible for you. You're having a bad night, buddy. You're having a bad
I
night.
just want a good draft, 5!
I'm having a great night.
Fine, I'll call you back.
All right. I'll call you back.
There's another trade? The Eagles have traded up! What is going on? I'm still waiting for the frickin' frack. The pick is in. What is happening? It's the free agency all over again. Let's see. Please no. Please not Jameson Williams. No! 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 They got Jameson Williams! Oh my God, no! No! The Lions have betrayed me! Oh my God, no. No, 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 no! No! All the wide receivers are going! The receivers are gone! No! I wanted Jameson Williams so bad! And the Lions, they get Hutchinson and Williams! It's not fair! This is the Vikings! This is the Vikings! You purple incarnation of Satan bastards!